Hi, this is Irving Steele, your host of Local Issues, and today we are diving into veterans and veteran issues thanks to a friend of mine named Brian Burridge who connected us. He's the veteran representative for veterans throughout Eastern Connecticut, and he introduced me to Ryan Landry, who is the founder and CEO of Everlasting Veteran, and he has launched a whole platform, social media, podcasts. He has, I think, 8 or 9 trademarks going on right now, clothing line, and a lot more. And a lot of that is to help veterans at the core of his mission. So Ryan, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, thank you for your service. I know maybe some people say that to you, but I really do appreciate everything that you've gone through and serving our country. It's not for everyone, and appreciate what you do to really help us to allow America to be the country that we are, the safety, the security, especially as we see things in the news right now. It's really important. Really thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a big struggle sometimes, when veterans get out of the service, and, as a country we can do better, to help the people that are serving the country.
For sure. I 200% believe wholeheartedly with that as well, that I've had quite a few uncles who have served. My grandfather was in Iwo Jima and have that connection myself. I never served in the military, but I was abroad. I was overseas for about 10 years. And so maybe some of these similar things, not exactly obviously, but being away in a different environment, coming back to your own country, there's so much to be said about what we need to do to help veterans when they're coming back and trying to assimilate and come back to their own country. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, it pains me to say from the time that we spoke to schedule this till now, in the last week, just with the 2nd Cavalry Regiment Dragoons, we've lost 3 more great Americans who've taken their own life. One in which I know personally and I served with. So it's a topic that nobody wants to really dive into and learn how to help. The biggest part is understanding each other. It's not just a crisis, I think, for the veteran community, but I think as a nation, we can do a better job of coming together. With Everlasting Veteran, and I've been saying lately, is, you can't have community without unity. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is, being able to understand each other, being able to really understand and actively listen. Through that, we'll be able to properly help each other, and a lot of times conversations do help, but, there are times where, you have to read into the conversation to really know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. For sure, and it's something that right now there's, based on the numbers you mentioned, I'm really sorry for the loss of the 3 recent people from your group there, that the numbers from what I read and understand, it's something like 22 veterans a day is what we lose, plus or minus, and as a whole, mental health and these other conditions affect maybe 1 out of 4 Americans based on the numbers as well. And there's a lot of money, a lot of resources going towards this, but it still feels like we're not solving maybe the issue or what really needs to be solved. And you mentioned, sure, we can have these conversations, we can talk to different people, but maybe it takes the next step of, sure, you can hear what someone says, but then to really, truly listen to them, listen to their heart of what's truly going on in their life. And it's a whole nother level that I can only imagine when you're in this completely different environment, you're overseas, you're trying to protect our country, you're serving, people become very close. It's a brotherhood. It's a family, is my understanding, and you come back and then what? We need more support. I feel a lot of politicians are out there saying they'll do whatever for the veterans. They'll talk to the veterans, they'll take a picture with a veteran. But then at the end of the day, are they providing the resources needed for veterans? Are they listening to veterans? And not just listening for a photo opportunity, but truly listening and helping to solve the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, the first thing is, you mentioned about 22 veterans a day. That's a statistic the VA ran back in the early 2000s, and hasn't been touched really since. There have been some organizations like America Warrior Project that came out last year, and I did an episode on it. It's just one of the many statistics. Some of it's getting reported as self-injury, not suicide. So the numbers get skewed a little bit as far as the 22 a day. It's more like 44 to 46. And with research, and not just research on statistics, you need to do research on what actually is the problem, what actually is going on, and how to be able to properly help somebody. The biggest thing that I'm seeing, and myself included, going through the VA process and everything else, is the amount of veterans that are ETS and getting out of the military every single year. Astronomical number of 200,000 plus every year. The system is overwhelmed. With that comes proper funding to be able to adequately help, veterans. And with like Everlasting Veteran, one of the things that, I've started is the dog program, and getting future service dogs out to veterans. And anybody that's a dog lover is going to know that you have a special connection.
Definitely.
Animals can feel and sense. That's why they have like equine therapy. And that's not just, for veterans, right? So people understand that, service animals play a special part. And there's not enough studies done or understanding of how, right? And being able to understand that and how the mind is able to process and decompress and be able to let some of it go is the bigger understanding that we need to get to be able to save lives. And then, with, the journeys of getting out of the military, many people experience this, not just veterans, right? Your identity. Who am I, right? You may do something, but that doesn't define who you are, right? If you have a job, that's what you do, not who you are, and, the lack of brotherhood is another one. It's spread out. The brothers and sisters to your left and your right that are there 24/7 supporting you, mission after mission and training after training, they're no longer there 24/7. And you build strong bonds, rightfully so. And being able to connect with other like-minded people in this similar fashion when you get out is going to be one of the keys to your success. And transition out of service is a more in-depth transition that people realize. And for me, it took me a while to be able to realize that it's not a singular transition.
Ongoing.
It's an ongoing transition, right? And, with like Everlasting Veteran, my biggest thing is I want people to get perspective from all angles. I don't just have veterans on. I don't just have current service members on. It is the vast majority that do come on, but I have comedians. I have doctors,
Business coaches.
business coaches. I'm going to be having a CEO of a real estate company coming on because, when you dive into a new life and reintroduce yourself into the civilian world as a veteran, you're creating that new identity, and everybody can relate to that when you go and you change jobs. But it's tenfold when it comes to veterans because there's so much purpose that you feel while you serve for this country, and, it's one of those struggles. There's many of them, and, every veteran goes through just a little bit of it.
Yeah, and all these things that you're talking about are hard and difficult for just an average American or average human being. The feeling of belonging or kind of adjusting, becoming a new self in a new environment and all these different things. But then if you have different health issues on top of that. I know, like I just said, 1 out of 4 Americans maybe have different things with mental health conditions, but if maybe you have traumatic brain injury, TBI, and maybe if you have PTSD from different environments, things going on, depression, anxiety, stress, these different things, it just adds a layer upon layer upon layer of assimilating and kind of redefining of who you are.
Absolutely.
And it just makes it that much harder. And you mentioning the dogs, I completely agree with you on that as well, that sometimes maybe you don't want to go talk to a therapist, or you don't want to take medicine for different things that are going on, or different instances like that. But with a dog, maybe they have that super high level of empathy that they can truly heal people. One of our past guests was Foundation for Middletown. Maybe you know them, Forever in My Heart Foundation. And they also raise money to provide money for dogs for veterans as well. So I love that aspect of you're hitting on all these different fronts. Right before we got on studio here, you said you're able to really kind of step back and see the big picture. And not everyone can do that.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times it's difficult, and myself included, even though I got out of the military and I started policing, and it has a purpose in itself, that purpose of, serving your community where you grew up from, or, just a sense of service of community, that you serve. But I still had those struggles of who I am, who's Ryan Landry, who do I want to become? How do I push myself beyond my limits? How do I push myself to be a better person? A better friend, a better husband, everything else. And having that lack of identity of who I was and lack of my self-purpose. And it's not just veterans that go through it. A lot of people go through it. We're all in it together. We really are. And if you open up your ears and you listen, you actively listen to each other. And you touched on, TBI and PTSD, mental health and everything else. There's people that haven't served in the military that have TBIs. Traumatic brain injury is a real thing. There's not a lot of people that understand, the aspects of it. When you speak with people, you may not know that they have one, but you just think they have an issue speaking or whatever the case may be. But the point is that, the mindset in which the veteran's in, you have to understand is, okay, maybe somebody didn't go to war and sustain these injuries, but you're relatable with what you're going through in the moment of how you're handling and coping and everything else. And that's why, I say that you can't have community without unity, and you can't even spell the word, because we can all learn from each other, service or not. Obviously Everlasting Veteran is, geared towards veterans, first responders, as far as the service dog program goes. But, everybody can be involved and help grow the community better than it's ever been. And we've all seen it over the last few years of how devastating this country has taken a turn as everybody's against each other, and it's not, oh, how can I help you, and a lot of that comes down to, you can't 100% help somebody else or even get close to it if you're not the best version of yourself to begin with, and a lot of what I do is I try to implement what I've learned through experience, not just reading a book, not just, listening to a podcast or anything like that, of what's worked for me, and putting that out. And I think that's a lot of others do that as well. And it's the most genuine and sincere way to be able to help people. But you first have to take the steps to help yourself be the best version, and then start helping others.
Yeah, and it's scary. It's risky of putting yourself out there, being vulnerable and saying, hey, maybe I do have some faults. Maybe I do have some health issues, or maybe I do have some experiences that I need to overcome. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and they were saying, oh, they're really sensitive on these different issues because of past traumas. And just to kind of admit that and to be open about that is really, really hard. But it's kind of that first step of saying, hey, you have these different things going on. You want to be a better person. And if you can be a better person yourself, the potential positive impact that you can have on creating a united community, a true community, is endless. I mean, the repercussions from what I saw, let me know your thoughts, but what I saw maybe about 4 years ago at the start of the pandemic, it seemed like we had a brief moment where people were being a little extra kind, they were helping each other out a little bit more, maybe being a little bit more understanding. But over the last maybe 2 or 3 years, it seems like our country has almost taken the opposite turn where, like you just said, like we're all Americans,
Right.
but we're all attacking each other.
Yeah.
How is that unity at all?
It's not, and a lot of, it's unfortunate that, people look back and the closest that the country's been together in decades was when 9/11 happened and the country was attacked. And, a lot of times what happens, even down to the lowest level of, family members starting to communicate, friends starting to communicate, unfortunately, we get so engulfed in our busy lives that we don't take the time. And life happens, but sometimes you need to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's a huge lesson. I'm trying to practice that myself quite a bit.
yeah,
Of just really trying to slow down, be in that present moment of what's going on. It's fine. Hey, good thing you have some water here to drink and help you feel a bit better. That we were talking too just before as well on things like digital media and social media and the pace of things in our lives now. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. So, I mean, this is real, right? So, just recently I got diagnosed with COPD. I don't smoke, all right? It's the stuff that we breathed in Afghanistan, right? And I mean, it's one of those things that, I didn't know, I knew that I was breathing in dust and everything else. And, it's the small things that a lot of people don't see. I used to be kind of embarrassed, right? That, I can't breathe right. I can't, run like I used to. I can't do this. I can't do that. But it's real. Mm-hmm. So after finally getting a diagnosis, it made me kind of understand that, okay, I need to adapt to what I'm doing. I mean, it's one of those things too when you do a podcast and all of a sudden you kind of go into a coughing fit. Sometimes like people suck air down the wrong way or whatever the case is. But it's seriously, it's one of those things that has an adverse effect on your life consistently, right? Inhalers, breathing treatments, whatever. Those are just small ailments, which many veterans are being able to, get properly treated for, especially with the PACT Act, which just got signed in 2021, I believe, which goes all the way back to the Gulf War era veterans that, the VA never recognized, Agent Orange and, stuff like that. So, it goes to show the progression of actually being able to understand the physical aspects of what happens to your body through these deployments, exposures, and everything else. It's similar to firefighters. They breathing is the biggest thing in their job. With smoke inhalation and everything else, and exposures, and the type of chemicals that they would use to put out fires. That's probably the best way to equate it. Of even though you may have a full career, 20 years as a firefighter, even just a short deployment of 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, you're in that environment 24/7, 365. And I hope you guys don't edit it out. did a breathing treatment and took my inhaler and all that stuff before I came, hoping that I wouldn't end up in a small coughing fit. But it's real.
It's real.
It's real. It happens. That's my life. And learning to accept and not allow it to be your demise, right? And blaming, I can't do this, because of what I'm going through, and there's people that have significantly more challenges than I do. I take everything that I have, as a blessing. Don't take anything for granted, and I would never change, joining and serving.
I was just going to ask you if you would.
I would never change it. I loved serving in the Army. I loved, every aspect of it. The physical and mental health, afterwards. It's a journey. But if anybody that is going through any type of struggle and you grow from it and you learn from it, you become a stronger person. Whether it's physical, mental, whatever the case is, it's a testament to your willingness to be a better person. So instead of, when I first started podcasting, instead of taking multiple cuts, if I, went into a, little cough here and there, I'd leave it in. It's what I go through. I just had an episode not too long ago. I may switch cameras, so that's not what you're just, you're seeing, but I'll switch cameras to the guests I have. But other than that, maybe mute my audio so that way the guests can still talk and you just don't hear a bunch of coughing. But it is what it is, I've learned to accept it, and that's the biggest. And a lot of it came from my wife pushing me to go through this health journey to figure out what's truly going on with me, and so I could be that much better, physically and mentally and everything else.
That's great.
So.
And that's one thing I really admire about you and what you're doing, that sure, like you said, we all have different constraints, health issues, physical, mental. We all have different things kind of holding us back, and we're very lucky to be in the position we are here. We're still alive. We still have another day or another hour at least to do as much as we can with this time that we have allotted to us. But you've been able to kind of take maybe some of these pains, some of these struggles, some of these challenges, and build a whole platform to not only inspire, I think, other people, other veterans, but also to show that there's another path that you can take. And it seems like you're making great progress. I saw something like 12 or 15,000 subscribers on your podcast now. A bunch of them are getting, thousands. I saw one episode got maybe over 10,000 views. And I love the way, personally, one of my favorite things about your episodes are your intros and what you're able to do kind of with the videos, like showing actual footage from when you served abroad. It's super cool. Yeah. So I think you're super talented at that, and it's awesome that you're able to display that.
Yeah, and that was one thing. I never taken a media class, and all that stuff, and I have a full studio now, and
you learned it all on your own.
All on my own. I've always been one of those people that like either taking stuff apart, putting it back together, figuring out how it works. So it was an avenue for me to be able to push myself personally, and push myself beyond my limits, and in doing so, it helped me grow. It helped me, connect with people in a different way, being able to help them be their own voice as well is a huge thing. So many people take it for granted when, somebody wants to tell you a story, right? If you actively listen to somebody when they tell you a story of real life stuff, right? Not only are they using it in a way to be able to let go of what's going on a little bit, but they're also using it in a way so that you can learn. You can learn about them. You can learn about what they're going through. And if you take a little bit from that conversation positive and apply it into your life, right? And you keep doing that in every single connection that you make, right? You're going to be so well ahead, in a year, 10 years, than if you just closed your mind off and, I can do it all myself. I don't need nobody's help. And there's certain aspects that I enjoy doing it myself. It's therapy for me. When I sit down and I put the headphones on and I sit in front of a mic, my mind's not like going a mile a minute. When I sit down, and at first I only had a mic, I didn't have a camera. But let me tell you, when I first did my first video recording,
how was that?
That was nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
All right. And the progression from what it was a year ago, I just had the year anniversary of the start of Everlasting Veteran in February, to now, is such a milestone of success that I'm so proud of. To be able to connect with so many people from across the country, around the world, and I still communicate with guys that I serve with, in the Canadian Army, Australian Army, and the perspective from them of how veterans are able to deal with their stuff is completely different. In Australia, it's I wouldn't say necessarily venture to say behind the times, but it's not as open like we are here. A lot of people, just bury it deep. Everybody copes in a different way, but when you're at your worst moments and when darkness feels like it's closing in, and you need to reach out, don't be afraid to. There's other people that are going through the same thing, or similar. And unfortunately, like I said, we lost Sergeant Michaels last Friday. I got the phone call this past week, and however close you are or however distant you are, it's still a brother. It's still a family member, that you serve with, whatever the dynamic is. And as a police officer, seeing it, time and time again, learning that, they're a veteran, or even just somebody that didn't serve, the community, as I see it, is hurting. And in order to blend together, right, we need to listen to each other.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, we have to wrap up, but that's the perfect point to end on, and we need to listen to each other. So really grateful for you to join us today, for your service and all that you're doing with Everlasting Veterans. So thank you again for your time.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.